Hello everybody, welcome to this latest edition of Played by NCG, where we talk about courses that we have recently played. I am delighted as always to be joined by NCG's Top 100s editor Dan Murphy. Dan, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. How are you?
Very well, very keen to get cracking and talk about this course, which being from Yorkshire is a particular favourite of mine. So let's get cracking then. We are discussing Ganton today, a course that's about 8 miles from Scarborough. A really difficult course to classify this, I think, Dan. I've been trying very hard to think about what Ganton is. It's not a links, it's not parkland, it's not heathland. It is very good though.
Well, one of the worst phrases in golf, Steve, is inland links. Dreadful thing, which normally describes something that used to be a field that some earth has been moved on. So it creates piles of rubble, and then that's fancifully termed as sort of duneland. But actually, I think that Ganton is one of very few courses that can accurately be described as an inland links, and that is because once upon a time the land that it sits on was the seaside, and then following the ice age, the sea receded away, and it just left behind this little patch of land, really in the middle of some Yorkshire Wolds farmland that is just perfect for golf, and that's Ganton.
Before we get into some of the specifics of the holes, there's a lot of things going on at Ganton at the moment, aren't there? We often think about traditional clubs as being the same for decades, but there's a lot of change going on at Ganton at the moment, and for the better, I think, as well.
Yes, it's great to see. At the risk of being shot down in flames, I think there was a feeling, or certainly among our NCG Top 100s panel, that not a lot had changed at Ganton over the last sort of 10 or 15 years. And indeed, in some ways, relatively speaking, while other clubs around it had moved forward, that Ganton had possibly slightly regressed. And it felt to me that there was an awful lot around the fairways that had grown and grown as, you know, as this is what happens, isn't it, if you've not got your eye on the ball. And it felt to me that there was an awful lot of suffocating gorse, quite a lot of deciduous trees, and it just felt to me that it was kind of moving away from what I think Ganton should be, which is, you know, a much more open course, a one that plays with a much. That's always helped it have the most fantastic turf over the years, and I think that what we saw on our recent visit was that they're well on their way to trying to uncover some of Ganton's fantastic features.
The work that they've done to recreate the sandy waste area on sort of the side of 17 and 18 is particularly exciting. There's a original book in the clubhouse, first edition of the golf courses of the British Isles by Bernard Darwin, and Roundtree's famous picture, isn't there, of that waste area as he saw it in the early 1900s, and it looks just like that now, doesn't it? It's been recreated exactly almost.
Yeah, it just looks brilliant, doesn't it? And it's a very unusual feature. So you have what looks like almost kind of like a bomb crater, I guess, on quite a big scale. And you drive over it on the 17th, and you drive over it on the 18th, going back the other way. And obviously that had become overgrown and, I mean, unsightly, maybe a bit strong, but certainly now it's been cleared out. I think it looks absolutely brilliant, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does indeed. Talking generally about Ganton, I think it's a course you need to play with a certain state of mind and a certain humility, because it is unashamedly difficult. I think the membership actually relished that to a certain extent. It is a strong test of golf, partly because in the summer it's very firm and it's very bouncy, which are the sort of conditions I love, but can make it difficult to control a shot. And then the bunkers are, I mean, the only course I can think of that are probably on a par for their ferocity is the Hodgkin at Woodall Spa.
Yeah, I mean, Ganton's old-fashioned cantankerous kind of golf course, and I mean that. I find that very endearing. It isn't going out of its way to help you as these great old-fashioned courses don't. It isn't being kind to you in terms of giving you too many obvious chances to score. So there are only 2 par 5s. There are 3 par 3s. So I guess it's a bit like the old course. I guess very close to that with its 2 3s and a couple of 5s. So it's a very different kind of setup to what we often see these days when courses have many more 4s and 5s. So many more 3s and 5s. Sorry. So it's not giving you much at all, and you can certainly get into quite big trouble early on, can't you? If you're not right into it from the start. There's plenty of trouble. Obviously, plenty of gorse, as we've said, and those trademark Ganton bunkers. There are plenty of those to catch you out.
Let's talk about some specific holes then. I'm a big fan of the first. I do think that the first hole makes a statement, and sometimes they're a bit too gentle for my liking. That's not the case here. It's not a blind tee shot, but you have to sort of see over the brow of a small hill, and there's a bunker lurking on the left, isn't there, that is there to trap anything that gets there fairly and unfairly sometimes as well.
Yeah, it's quite an intimidating start. I always think you have that perfect first tee, absolutely pristine. You really want to hit a good shot from there. Of course, you often have the starter in close attendance, adds a little bit more pressure. And then you have this semi-blind tee shot. Can't quite see where it's going to come down. You know there's gorse. You know there are bunkers. You're just desperate to get something away, aren't you? If you hit it onto the flat on the top, it's a perfectly manageable par to start with.
Yeah, it's a hole where strategy, I think, plays an important part, because the tendency is to get a driver out straight away, and you really don't need to. I mean, I think I hit hybrid 5-iron, and I laid the hybrid back. I mean, I could have hit 3-wood if I'd wanted to, but hit a hybrid to leave myself about 160. And so it is a hole that, if you think about it, and don't just go straight to the big dog, you can negotiate it successfully. You want to talk specifically, Dan, about the 6, which is just a tremendous hole.
Yeah. So 6 is one of 2 holes at Ganton that have been redesignated in par ahead of WHS. So the 6th is now a par 4 from all tees. It was a mix of 4 and 5, and the 17th is a 3 from all tees. That was a mix of 3 and 4. Now, that shouldn't really make any difference, because the hole's still the hole. But of course, it does make a difference, because when you stand on the 6th tee, and it's, regardless of which tees you're playing off, it's, certainly 450 yards, and it is a very, very intimidating tee shot. And you've got trouble all the way up the left, and it's not much better up the right. And part of you would quite like to throttle back off the tee and just try and get something in play. But of course, mentally, when it says par 4 and it's 450 yards, you don't really have that option anymore. So that is a very, very difficult tee shot, and it's an obvious card wrecker, isn't it?
It starts really, really simply as well, with that little pond in front, which shouldn't really come into play at all. It's just lurking there, isn't it, in your eye line? And the bunkering is particularly difficult for me there. I mean, I used to find the tee shot intimidating when it was a par 5, but I knew if I actually zipped one down the middle, then really a 5 was, I'd be looking at a 5 and I'd be disappointed if I didn't get it. The green is large, but it's relatively flat compared to some of the other surfaces that we'd see. But now, I'm hitting a good drive there, and I've still got 200, 210 in to try and hit that green. And for a mid-handicapper like me, that hole is just a completely different proposition now as a 4 rather than the 5.
Yeah, and you obviously have the same challenges at the 17th, which is just one of those classic old-fashioned holes that predates par. And people who grumble about it because it's neither one thing nor the other, I think they're missing the point. The challenge of that hole is like any other hole. The challenge is to get from one end to the other in as few strokes as possible, and whether it says 3 or 4 beside it is neither here nor there really. That is a hole, even though it says 3 on. I would say that for a lot of golfers, the wise thing to do is to lay up and leave themselves a pretty straightforward pitch down the green. I mean, of course, your good self, you absolutely ripped it on there, Steve, on the day. But yeah, I think my advice would be don't get too caught up in par, although I know that's easier said than done.
I think it was too easy as a 4, the 17. For someone like me, you know, who plays off, I was playing off 12 that day at Ganton under WHS. You know, as a 4, that's just a 5-iron chip 2-putt, and my ability. I mean, okay, I'm not like the best at all things, but you know, I should be quite confident in hitting a 5-iron and a chip and 2-putt a 225 yards. Or 230-yard par 4, whereas I really love the heroic nature of that shot now. You know, I did have to get the 3-wood out, and great, you know, I ripped it and it ended up about 20 feet away, and then I completely messed up the putt, but we won't talk about that. But there is something heroic about that now, whereas I think before, you know, if I'd had a card in my hand, it's just a meat and drink 4. You know, if I was putting around him, whereas now, right, well, I've got a decision to make here. You know, if I'm there, I'm not getting a shot on that hole, and I need to score for you know, it makes the decision a very different one.
Yeah, it's amazing how it messes with you. It really shouldn't do, but it does.
Let's go back one hole to the 16th, which we use the word all-timer with care, I think, but this hole really is. And for me, it starts with the massive cross bunker that basically threatens to swallow up your drive. I mean, that thing is deep, and they just wouldn't build something like that anymore architecturally, which is a shame because it's such a fun thing about that hole.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of hole that ends up in a composite, you know, best 18 holes in GB&I or England or whatever it is that you're trying to do, and you're going to struggle to find a better 16th than Ganton's. Definitely improved by them taking the gorse out. I mean, it got to the stage where if you were putting from the back corner of the green, there was sort of nowhere to put your bag. You know, you almost had the gorse like right up against you, and they've cleared that out. And the great thing is when they move this stuff out is that it opens up these views. And Ganton you've got the North York Moors on one side, you've got the Wolds on the other, looking out towards sea on a third. You know, it is an absolutely amazing visual course, and like such huge Yorkshire landscapes. And what a shame that so many of them can be blocked out by, you know, what we have to remember is a weed. And that view behind the 16th is absolutely fantastic. And really, the course had nothing to do with the hole, like it was just encroaching around the green, that was all.
Yeah, and it looks completely different actually now. I mean, I'm lucky to have played Ganton a few times, and you know, now you can see across to the players teeing off on the 17th. You can see the full clubhouse in behind. It's a very, very different vista. And as you say, you know, the gorse in that sense was adding nothing to the strategy of the hole outside of being a hazard if you went too long on the green. But that chip back, if you are long, is difficult enough actually now without the gorse there. It's a different proposition because you haven't got a thick weed basically stinging you, if that's the right word. But it's still a very difficult shot to negotiate back up onto the green, particularly if the pin's towards the back of the putting surface.
Yeah, and I think it's probably the only hole I might be pushing it a bit. One of very few holes on the course where I think the trees do have a place. Because you do feel off that tee that the first thing, obviously, as you say, is to clear the cavernous bunker, and then you do feel that you're threading that tee shot more than you would like to be threading a tee shot on a hole of that length. You're like, it's not a tee shot where you feel you can let rip. It does feel like a placement tee shot, and yeah, at the back of your mind, you're thinking, wow, I don't particularly want to be hitting down this corridor. You know, from 200 yards if I can avoid it. I mean, often you can't avoid it. I mean, it's just a fantastic par 4 at that stage of the round. And I know I spent quite a lot of the 2003 Walker Cup, as you probably did as well, hiding behind that green where quite a few matches were culminating. And it was amazing that even in the Walker Cup, how often that hole was won by a 4, especially in foursomes.
Yeah, I had that exact shot, 200 yards. Because I steered one over the cross bunker and had to look to see if it got there. I think we'll see the video for people who are viewing the vodcast of me sort of peering up over the bunker to see if I got there. But then again, you know, I've got hybrids 210 yards with a bunker right hand side front of the green that you just don't want to be in.
No, absolutely not. No, I mean tends to be the way, doesn't it? At Ganton, you really don't want to be in these bunkers, and especially those that are a little bit further away from the putting surface, because you've obviously got to get a lot of height to get them out, and if you need to also cover some distance, then that makes it even more difficult.
So that seems a good place to finish. Dan, thanks for joining me as always.
Thank you, Steve.
And you can enjoy more of our Played by NCG vodcasts on our YouTube channel. And if you're interested in a bit more of a deeper dive about Ganton and all of the courses that we've looked at, check out our podcasts on SoundCloud. For all your golfing news, make sure to visit our website, nationalclubgolfer.com.